Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to Crime Zone. As the old saying goes, more isn't always better. Today, we're going to be looking at 3 stories that embody this idea from the world of true crime. Far from being slackers, the subjects of these cases arguably put in too much planning and/or effort. The problem was that they seemingly never stopped to question whether their work was worth the anticipated reward. Before we get to today's stories, if you find our videos interesting and informative, don't forget to like and subscribe to Crime Zone for more true crime content like this. It really helps to support the channel, and if you've watched a few of our videos already, then you might not even realize that you're not subscribed. While you're there, make sure to hit the notification bell to stay up to date with our latest releases. A huge thanks as always for watching, and with that out of the way, here are 3 needlessly elaborate crimes that weren't worth the payoff. On the morning of August 23rd, 2007, a team of construction workers in the Greater Manchester area of England made an unbelievable discovery. They were on a job site at a local shopping plaza called Fairfield Retail Park and were in the middle of laying electrical cables, when all of a sudden, the ground where they were digging partially gave way. Though under normal circumstances, this might have been cause for alarm, possibly even evidence of some kind of dangerous sinkhole, the puzzled workers soon realized that they had stumbled upon something much stranger. They had actually breached the top of a secret tunnel. When the workers investigated further, the bizarre discoveries only continued. The entrance to the tunnel was a wooden trap door disguised with soil, which was located on a nearby embankment next to a railway line that ran behind the plaza. The tunnel was between 4 and 5 feet tall and roughly 40 feet long. It was accessible via a ladder concealed underneath the trapdoor, at the base of which were wheelbarrows and shovels that had obviously been used in its construction. The quality of the tunnel was perhaps the biggest surprise for the work crew. Not only had its walls been reinforced with boards and metal scaffolding poles, but it was equipped with electric lighting and a proper supply of fresh air. Whoever had dug this tunnel, it appeared to be some kind of semi-professional job. When police were called to the scene, they were able to confirm that no such tunnel should have existed where the workers had been digging. It had therefore been illegally constructed, likely by multiple suspects given the amount of work involved. As for the tunnel's purpose, investigators thought they had a pretty good idea. It turned out that the 40-foot tunnel had been leading directly towards one of the businesses at the Fairfield Retail Park. More specifically, a Blockbuster video store, which had an ATM machine built directly into one of its exterior walls. Based on old photos of the plaza we were able to find online, it appears that the ATM wasn't directly accessible to customers from within the Blockbuster store, but was rather meant to be used by people outside. However, the machine was still physically part of the same building, and there was a small room behind the wall that it was built into that existed for the purposes of maintenance, as well as to make it easier for the ATM to be periodically restocked with cash. It was this room, police theorized, that the suspects had been trying to dig their tunnel to. Once there, they would have dug up through the floor, detached the ATM from the inside, and carried it back through their hidden passageway. Unfortunately for the culprits, they were still 20 feet short of the ATM room at the time the tunnel was discovered by the work crew. While investigators had several unanswered questions about the case, including how many suspects had been involved in digging the tunnel, how long it had taken them, and where they had discarded the dirt removed from the actual digging process, there was little evidence to go on to catch the culprits. Because the scheme had been unsuccessful and nothing had actually been stolen, authorities ultimately opted to simply fill in the tunnel with concrete and move on. Indeed, the whole bizarre situation might have been forgotten about forever after that, if it weren't for what happened next. Nearly 4.5 years later, on the morning of January 4th, 2012, police received a call from a couple of security guards at the Fairfield Retail Park about a robbery. At first, Officers must have thought they were experiencing some serious déjà vu. The target was an ATM at the plaza's Blockbuster video store, and the suspects had dug some sort of secret tunnel. However, this time there was a big difference. The cash machine had actually been successfully stolen. When authorities arrived at the scene, they found an extremely similar situation to the one they had investigated 4 years earlier. The new secret tunnel had been dug from the exact same railway embankment as the first one, and was approximately 4 feet tall, and was impressively reinforced with metal support bars and equipped with lighting and a fresh air supply. There were some important differences, however. This time, the robbers had been forced to use a longer route to get to the ATM, meaning that the new passageway was 100 feet long. It was also clear that some sort of drilling equipment had been used to finish the job. It had been necessary to get through the 15-inch thick concrete floors of the room where the ATM had been housed. Police at the time estimated it would have taken a group of suspects at least 6 months to construct the tunnel and drill through the concrete. Like the previous time, investigators had few clues to go on and were at a loss to identify the culprits. The best they could do was speculate that since the crime had so many similarities to the first tunnel-related incident, that the same people had likely been involved in carrying out both schemes. The criminals were branded the Mole Gang, or alternatively, the Mole in the Wall Gang, and as far as we can tell, were never actually caught. Now you might be thinking to yourself right now, if they got away, how is this not worth the payoff? Well, that's because we haven't told you how much was actually in the ATM at the time it was stolen. Authorities estimate at the time of the crime there was only about 6,000 pounds, or about $9,300 US inside. While the ATM was reportedly capable of holding around 20,000 pounds, it apparently hadn't been restocked yet after the Christmas and New Year holidays. Now look, we're not saying that 6,000 pounds on its own is anything to sneeze at, but consider the fact that it likely took a group of people to carry out this crime. That means that at best, these suspects were probably splitting that money at least 3 or 4 ways. And when you factor in the time and considerable effort it likely took to build the tunnel, not to mention all the work that went into the failed first tunnel, it really seems like these people might have ended up with more money if they just put the same amount of hours into working even a minimum wage job. And that's assuming they already had the tools they needed to construct the tunnels in the first place. If not, they might have actually lost money on this robbery. Indeed, this appears to have been at least partly the attitude of law enforcement as well. In a statement given to the news outlet The Guardian at the time, one police spokesman referred to the amount of stolen money as, quote, pocket change, noting that it was only slightly more than he had recently paid for a used car. In July of 2014, a police officer in Maywood, New Jersey, named Matthew Parody, pulled over a vehicle for a traffic violation. It turned out that the driver, 58-year-old Olawale Agoro, was actually breaking several laws and was issued a total of 5 summonses for issues ranging from driving with a suspended license to driving without insurance. However, when Olawale's court date rolled around on September 19th of that year, things immediately began to go sideways. Though a man matching the 58-year-old's description showed up to the proceedings, he announced that he was not in fact Olawale. He was his twin brother, Tony. Oh yeah, and he was also legally blind. Tony explained that Olawale wasn't able to make it that day, but that he had come on his brother's behalf to arrange a formal delay. This was granted, though immediately some were raising their eyebrows. Chief among these people was Officer Parody, who was in the courtroom and thought that Tony looked a little too identical to the man that he had pulled over in July, even for a so-called identical twin. He was sure that this was the same guy. Parody was also more than a little suspicious about Tony's claim about being legally blind, since, He seemed to be walking around the courtroom without assistance and passing relevant documents back and forth like everyone else. Sure enough, when the proceedings were over that day, Parody observed Tony asking people in the parking lot to drive his car around the corner for him, presumably because he thought this would look less suspicious. After someone finally obliged, Parody watched again as a short distance from the courthouse, Tony hopped back into the driver's seat and continued on his way. Parody pulled him over, gave him 3 more tickets, and impounded his vehicle. You know, since he was supposed to be legally blind. When Tony picked up the car, he said that he had lied about being blind, but insisted he was still telling the truth about being Olawale's twin brother. Though Olawale continued to miss court dates after this, Tony kept showing up, each time begging for the court's forgiveness and asking for further adjournments. He said that Olawale was back in Nigeria mourning the death of their father. Apparently, this happened on at least 3 separate occasions with different court officials, until finally a warrant was issued for Olawale's arrest. Sure enough, even at this hearing, Tony was the only one who showed up, but by then, everyone was sick of the obvious ruse and he was placed under arrest. During questioning, the 58-year-old was unable to produce any official documentation proving that he was Tony, and fingerprint testing later definitively proved that Tony did not exist. It was Olawale all along. He was sent to the Bergen County Jail in lieu of $20,000 bail and charged with hindering apprehension, false swearing, and resisting arrest. While we weren't able to find any additional reporting about the case revealing what ultimately happened to Olawale, we would argue that no matter which way you slice it, this bizarre and elaborate con was not worth it. For starters, Olawale ended up with even more traffic tickets than he started with, not to mention the additional charges against him. Also, it's not even clear exactly what he was hoping to achieve by delaying his court proceedings. At best, he was prolonging the inevitable. I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I couldn't get enough of Lego. I loved building the sets, making my own creations, and whenever Christmas or my birthday came around, there was always something Lego or Lego related that was at the top of my wish list. For a while as a kid, I even thought I might want to be an architect, something that was 100% due to my interest in building and creating with Lego. Of course, that childhood dream quickly fell by the wayside when I got a little older and realized that I have terrible visual and design skills. Of course, not everyone is as crap as I was at building with Lego. For many, the obsession survives into adulthood. I mean, just take a look around on YouTube. People are making some truly amazing stuff. Unfortunately, like any hobby, there's the potential for things to get out of hand. That's doubly true for things like Lego. Those colorful bricks can not only get pretty pricey pretty fast, but many of the sets are also highly sought-after collector's items. In short, it can cause some people to lose their heads, to turn into Lego maniacs in the truest sense of the term. Case in point, the subject of our final segment, Thomas Langenbach. Back in 2012, Thomas was 47 years old, and to the casual observer would have seemed like any normal guy his age. He was married, had 2 kids, and lived in the city of San Carlos, California, almost smack dab between San Jose and San Francisco. Originally from Germany, Thomas graduated from university with a computer science degree and moved to the US around the time of the new millennium for work. But you see, Thomas had a secret that involved Lego. It wasn't that he loved Lego. He was totally open about that. At home, he had his massive collection of bricks all neatly sorted and organized by color and size, making it all the easier to design and build whatever he wanted. No, the secret had to do with how he acquired his collection, or at least some of it. You see, at some point, Thomas learned that he could utilize his computer skills to drastically reduce the cost of buying his beloved Lego sets. The only problem was, that this didn't exactly involve clipping coupons. His discount was more of the 5-finger variety, if you catch my drift. Basically, Thomas learned how to create and print his own barcode stickers for a number of different Lego products. He would then walk into his local Target store, slap these stickers onto higher-priced sets, and then pay the reduced price. That Lego Star Wars X-Wing Starfighter that was retailing for $59.99, Thomas was paying $19.99 for it. The $139.99 Millennium Falcon set, Thomas snapped it up for $50. Incidentally, a lot of the sets that he took a liking to seemed to have been Star Wars related. This was only half of the scheme though. When Thomas got the sets home, he sold many of them on his eBay store for full price or beyond. To his unwitting customers, he went by the name Tom's Brickyard. Unfortunately for Thomas, as he continued his barcode banditry at Target stores all around the San Francisco Bay Area, some employees started to take notice. This began on April 20th, 2012, when a staff member at one of the company's stores in Cupertino became suspicious. While inside the store, Thomas purchased 2 Lego sets, one for $24.99 and another for $49.99. Their actual prices were supposed to be $69.99 and $119 respectively. This was discovered when the employee alerted loss prevention, who were able to confirm the barcode switching thanks to surveillance footage of Thomas in the store. Over the next couple of weeks, Thomas continued on, unaware that Target's loss prevention team was trying to identify him. He even hit some of the same stores multiple times. Meanwhile, his photo was being distributed to employees at locations all over the area. Thomas's luck finally ran out on May 8th of that year, when a loss prevention officer at a store in Mountain View recognized him from one of these photos. He watched Thomas put his own barcodes on 3 items before putting 2 back on the shelves and taking 1 to the register. He cashed out, left the store, and was apprehended in the parking lot. He was then arrested by local law enforcement. When questioned by police, Thomas gave a bizarre excuse. While admitting to switching the barcodes on the Lego sets, he said that he had only done it as an experiment because he had heard about it online and wanted to see if it was actually possible. He claimed that he had never intended to steal. He had simply forgotten about the fact that he had switched the barcodes when he went to check out. Understandably, police did not buy this, especially when Target provided them with footage of Thomas doing the same thing at multiple stores in the area. When a search of Thomas's house was conducted, officers found hundreds of unopened Lego sets, among them several of the ones that he had been observed stealing from Target. Police also found 8 Ziploc bags in his car that were stuffed full of his homemade barcodes. While it wasn't clear exactly how long Thomas was running his barcode switching scam for, authorities discovered that he had been operating his eBay store, Tom's Brickyard, for just over a year. In that time, he had sold more than 2,100 items and had brought in about $30,000. Okay, so you might be saying to yourself right about now, $30,000? That's a lot of money, and you'd be absolutely right. However, here's why the whole thing wasn't worth it in our opinion. Remember when we mentioned earlier that Thomas moved to the US for work? Well, that job was with SAP, a massive German software company that employs tens of thousands of people worldwide. By the time of Thomas's arrest, he was the vice president of the company's integration and certification center. In other words, Thomas made more than enough money to feed his Lego obsession legally. That house of his that they searched? It was a gated property worth over $2 million. Not only was the whole barcode scam unnecessary, it put his far more lucrative job in jeopardy. Sure enough, according to reports, he was officially fired from SAP a few months after his arrest made the news, though we did see that he has yet to update his LinkedIn page. Fortunately for Thomas, police could only prove that he had switched the barcodes on Lego sets at 4 Target stores, so he was not prosecuted for anything related to his eBay store. He was initially charged with 4 counts of commercial burglary, which could have netted him 5 years in prison, but later accepted a plea deal. Instead, he was sentenced to 6 months in custody, only 30 days of which actually had to be served at a county jail. The rest of it was done as house arrest. Thomas was also given 3 years of probation and was ordered to pay a few $100s in restitution and court fees. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a minute to thank our amazing supporters over on Patreon. As many of you are aware, our situation on YouTube always seems to be a bit uncertain, but our patrons help to ensure that we can continue to make content like this long term without having to worry as much about what surprises might be thrown our way. Plus, patrons also get access to 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. If you'd like to help support the channel directly, head over to patreon.com/crimezone to join. You can also find that link in the description below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and take care.